talk number one, we talked about what is a BBL, and myself and Dr. Franco kind of went over that. So I want to sort of jump into the next realm, which I think always gets tacked on to what is a BBL. The question is then, how much fat do you need, or how much fat needs to be transferred so I can see results, so I can make people happy? So Dr. Franco, somebody comes in to you and say, hey, look, I'm looking for BBL. How much fat do they need? How much fat needs to be transferred?
That's a great question, and we get this both, at the courses that we teach and also from patients. And I think a couple things I'll tell you right off the bat, and here in a little bit we'll get your thoughts on this. You also got to be, from a patient perspective, a little careful when people talk about those numbers in terms of how much fat's being transferred, because it's apples and oranges. Everybody's not comparing the same type of thing. In my practice, I centrifuge and separate out the fat. I know that you have some separation methods as well. Both of us with the ultimate goal of really transferring the best or good fat. If you're just transferring fluid, water.
Let me jump in here for a second, Frank, because people at home, they just heard you use some very important words, but big words. You talk about centrifuge and fat. I want to break down. You're just literally saying separating the fat from the water. That's what you're talking about, right? Fat from water and blood.
From the water and from the oil, so that we're basically getting just good, viable fat that we can transfer to the butt.
And why does that matter, and why does it happen? Let's really kind of let's jump 2 steps back and sort of talk about why that happens and why it matters.
That's a great point, because in my mind here, your butt's a set envelope, and there's only so much fat that you can put in there. At some point, you can't physically put any more volume into the butt. And when I'm transferring that fat, I want to make sure that volume and that space is going to be taken up by good quality fat that's going to give you the best results possible. If you're filling that volume with water or oil or those type of things that are just naturally in our body when you liposuction, that's taking up some valuable real estate in your butt and hips.
All right. So just to recap, what you're saying is, hey, everybody's about 60% water. So when we're sucking fat out, 60% of what we're sucking out is water. Sometimes that fat's going to break, so that turns into oil. Injecting that in your booty doesn't do you any good. Is that why sometimes we hear? I think one of the major criticisms we hear from people is, my butt looked really big at first, but a couple weeks later, whole thing was gone. Run me through kind of what you think happened there.
I think 2 things, no question. I mean, you see numbers, and especially for some of our patients that do a lot of research on some of these various websites, the numbers are across the board. I think it's 2 things. One, no question, there's some people who just liposuction and transfer right back in. A large portion of that is water, and so that's just going to be absorbed like you normally would, so that goes away. Also, too, I've seen a lot of BBLs where patients look really good just because they're swollen from the surgery itself, but they didn't get the adequate volume transferred. You're going to lose a little bit of that fat no matter what. So if you don't make enough of a transfer, then I think it's, when all the dust settles, you're going to be a little short-handed. In my practice, I typically transfer somewhere between 800 to 1,300 per patient, but that's a wide range because it really depends from person to person and their body frame.
When you're saying 800, 1,300, just for the kids at home, you're talking about total fat, or are you talking about per butt cheek?
Per side. And when I talk about per butt, I'm talking about the butt and the infamous hip dip. So it's kind of that whole little area. So it's really spread over a large area.
I call that the frame. Now, let me give you sort of like one last question, and I think we'll kind of end this segment. I think we'll pick up another segment, too, where we kind of break this out a little further, because I want to talk about sort of before and afters and BBLs, because I think that's a hot topic, too. What about Skinny Girl? Skinny Girl comes in. She says she wants a fat transfer. Run me through your numbers on that, because is that 800 per cc's for a Skinny Girl?
No, and I tell people a couple things to expand on that. One, if somebody's really skinny, or they've had a tummy tuck or had lipo before, because there was a time before, the fat transfer, really got super popular.
Sure.
I do something called targeted fat transfer. You can still make a great difference by using a certain amount of fat, even if it's 300-400 cc's in the right places, can make a great difference for people. Yeah. Also, I tell everybody, if you're 6'1", and 180, 190 pounds, you're going to need more fat. If you're 4'11" and 90 pounds, you're not going to get 1,400 cc's into that butt. I mean, it's just
how many 6'1" How many 6'1" people are you running into?
It happens. Don't you worry, Dr. Nykiel.
But give me a number. Skinny person, give me a number, because people always want to hear numbers. So I want to push you on that. What's a skinny person comes in, 5 foot, 130. What's a reasonable number you think you're going to hit per side for that person?
They've never had lipo, and they're 130. I think we get somewhere around 700. Typically, we have to per side. In some of those people, we have to lipo more areas, inner thighs, maybe arms, doing some different areas to get more of that fat. So it varies. But this is where, again, to the point of coming to someone who does a lot of BBL, such as you and I, because you and I can tell them there's a lot of factors that go in there, and also depending on where you hold your fat. Some people are more internal fat, some people are more external. And that just means what fat's available for us to lipo. But typically, when you and I are able to see them, we can give them a pretty reasonable expectation of how much fat we have available for them.
I totally agree. And so I think you brought up a couple great topics. It's actually we're a little bit up on time, but so in the next couple things, I'd like to we'll bring up some segments on skinny BBLs because I think that deserves its own talk, right? And then how much fat is too much fat to transfer? I think that's another important one. And then we'll talk about before and afters, fake or real. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good day.